Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to ATF's extended online session, the ATF Plugged In Series 2022. Continuing with the kids content segment, we have a wonderful panel of buyers who will give us some insight into what they're looking for in the coming months. My name is Victoria de Kergel, and I'm Asia Pacific Consultant for K7 Media. Our guests today are from IEG Indonesia, ITV in the UK, and Hungama Digital Media Entertainment in India. Welcome to Dr. Hendy Lim, Darren Nati, and Saumini Paul. I'm going to kick off the discussion by asking each of you to tell us about your plans for 2022 and briefly reconfirm the specifics of what you're looking for in terms of kids programming. So I wonder if, Dr. Hendy Lim, I wonder if we could start with you. You are Director of Content Business at Indonesia Entertainment Group, overseeing the group's operations and businesses. IEG operates a multitude of content businesses for multiple platforms in the kids space, but you're also renowned for your drama and sports offering, amongst other genres. Today, we're very much here to talk about IEG's activities in the kids space. Could you tell us about your plans for the coming year and where your focus will be in terms of specifically kids programming?
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Kids is something that we have been doing for quite a few years, and it's been doing really well for us among our other channels. I think kids is one of the highest performing channel aside from the sports channel. So I think kids will remain and continue to be our main focus to grow our businesses, be it on the OTT space, on the TV space, and be it free TV or pay TV. The plan for this year would be to do, of course, continuing to do the acquisition, but as we all know, there is an ocean of kids IP being offered in the market. Every day we keep receiving lots and lots of offers. So I think how to select a good one is an art, I would say. But we need to narrow down our choices, because it is too much already in the market. So we need to narrow down. So going forward, we will try to focus on doing the kids program that is on the rise, and then the IP that is already mature, the one that has a large library. So what we are looking at is not just a piecemeal acquisition. The single title that is available in the market, if we find it good, then we will still do the acquisition. But strategically, I think we are looking at doing a large deal with whatever IP that is available in the market, that we can do a strategic partnership. So it's not just only a acquisition for a single title, but it will be a strategic partnership with a certain IP that is mature.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, if I could move on to Darren Nati, Acquisitions Manager for Film and Kids at ITV. Darren, you acquire for a large portfolio of channels. And I think for today, it would be really useful if you could share the specifics of the main 2 slots that you buy for, and also the motivation behind this increased focus on the Asian animation market.
Yeah, sure. It's quite interesting just listening to my colleague talk about strategic partnerships, because it is something that we are always on the lookout for. At ITV, we have a preschool block, which is aimed at 2 to 5 year olds, and we have an older kids channel called CITV, which has been going for many decades, and we serve 6 to 12s. For CITV, we tend to look out for very sort of cheeky, irreverent content. We don't do anything in the educational space, because the other channels in the UK with an educational remit. So it's a point of difference which works incredibly well between us and CBBC. So we are always on the lookout for animation that stands out, that's different, that's diverse, to reflect the audience that it serves. And on the preschool side, as I say, 2 to 5 year olds, it can have a bit of educational elements in it. I think that comes with most preschool shows. But what we don't look out for is something curriculum heavy. On your point about the Asian market, in the last few years, certainly in terms of content being pitched to us, I've seen a huge increase in a lot of Asian producers contacting ITV and working with us. We've always had a really good partnership with a few Asian production companies, but I would definitely say in the last few years, there's been a huge increase. Perhaps in terms the message that ITV is trying to give out there to producers in terms of the type of content we're looking for, that is certainly working, and we are seeing an abundance of the shows that we like and we feel appeals to our audience being pitched to us. So that is probably why I've been focusing on Asian content at the moment.
Wonderful. Thank you, Darren. And now I'd like to bring in Salmini Paul, SVP of Hungama Digital Media Entertainment, into the conversation. Salmini, the Hungama Kids OTT platform is set for expansion this year, and you acquire programming for an audience of 0 to 18-year-olds. Could you tell us about your journey so far and your plans for the brand in 2022?
Yeah, right. So actually, you know, the kids platform was more, it wasn't really in the radar initially. It so happened that I had started I took over the YouTube channels, you know, that Hungama has built as a part of its distribution network. And kids was a channel that we had, but at that time there was, you know, very random content. There was really no focus or no strategy per se. So when I took that over as a YouTube channel, I started seeing what was already on YouTube, and I realized if I want to build a channel for Hungama, how do I make it different, you know? And we realized that the philosophy is going to have to be the first approach. Because, you know, if you look at most of the other channels today, they've got really heavy duty 3D animation and 2D animation and characters. And, you know, they've got the legacy, they've built it over, you know, a lot of years. So it's going to be very tough to catch up to that, you know. So we said, okay, let's differentiate ourselves in terms of what our offering is. And I think the biggest differentiation was everyone else was catering to toddlers or, you know, preschoolers. And that's where we said, okay, let's look at, you know, content which is age appropriate, which is infotainment driven, and, you know, looks at children. I mean, of course, when you see abroad, you know, they teach the kids to be independent, you know, in an early age. But the Indian community, I would say, tends to baby the child even as they get into their teens, right? And the truth of the matter is, I believe, you know, even if you're 18, you're still a child, and there's still so much for you to learn. So, you know, we wanted to then look at how can we create content which essentially caters to 0 to 18 years and break it up into 5, you know, age brackets, and offer content which is specific to that age group. We started with creating content ourselves. So we had an editor, we had a scriptwriter, we had a voiceover artist, and you know, although India has some 35 languages and I don't know how many dialects, but we said, let's start with English and Hindi. So a lot of our content is English, and I would say it's like 60, 20, 20. So we have most content which is English, Hindi and English, and then you have only Hindi and only English. So we've created almost about 1,000 such short format videos. I mean, that was the other philosophy, that we wanted to keep the duration not more than 4 to 5 minutes, make it snacky, you know, don't make it heavy in terms of consumption. And of course, because we didn't have the kind of resources to go about doing 2D and 3D animation, or the time, because we wanted to put out one video every day. Right? And it is not possible to do that if you're doing a 3D animated content. So we said, let's look at motion graphics. Let's look at topics which are going to be the drivers. So every content that we put out has, either it's part of a series of, a theme that we've considered, or it's a standalone video that can just independently, give some kind of learning. And our positioning is go beyond the books. So stay educated, stay informed, but don't be only, like a bookworm, So, and you realize, I don't know how it is again abroad, but I think in India, we've seen a lot of times the textbooks are so heavy. When you just see the same thing in a video format, it just kind of really dumbs it down, right? So, and even as a parent, I experienced that. I would read my son's book and say, why do they complicate it so much? And then you'd see, a video on YouTube just completely simplifying it. So we started with that, and we basically built it in the SWOT model. So we have like pricing of 29 rupees for a monthly fee, or $2.99 for a year. What got exciting was when people started approaching us and they said, hey, we've got content, would you be interested? And more from a revenue perspective, I felt if I have to go that route, I need to create a separate kind of price point. So what we've done is we've introduced what we call a TWOT, which is like a monthly rental kind of package. So a couple of things that we have kind of set as parameters for identifying what kind of content should we bring into this is it needs to be series based. So at least about 7 to 8 videos of a particular theme or topic or whatever. Short format, not more than say an average of about 5 to 6 minutes. Age appropriate. So we're definitely keen to look at, so when we say age appropriate, we've got 0 to 2, which is largely catering to either infants or even mothers, soon to deliver mothers or just having delivered mothers. Then 3 to 5, which is largely your toddler age group. And so we've broken it up like that, right? So we're very keen to look at content that can actually cater to the tweens and the teens and adolescents, because everybody creates content for the pre-toddlers. Everyone's got nursery rhymes of different versions. But, I'm hoping that, and I was very excited when, I was approached for this panel, because I think it's through this, if, I can actually spread the word around and get people to know that here's the platform that's really looking at, educating kids of all age groups and make it, I think that's something, and I don't know if it's right for me to say this, but I feel sometimes YouTube does not deliver that, right? You'll end up seeing an 8-year-old child ends up seeing something that can be actually better for a 15-year-old. And that it's all algorithm based. It's about what he's watched last, right? So it's not so age appropriate in that sense. So that's where we're coming from essentially. It's still at a very nascent stage. I've got a lot of plans, and in fact, I'm right now, my biggest plan is I'm hiring a senior marketing manager who can come with the ideas and bring my vision to life. But yes, we definitely want to approach, go the schools route, so really reach out to the schools. And I think schools in India also have realized that they need the ability to provide education beyond the books, because that's getting too redundant. So I'm hoping, this platform helps me achieve that.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for that, Salmini. I'd just like to go back to Hindi now, if I may. So Salmini was talking about, the strength of local content, but also content that goes beyond the books. In Indonesia, we see that local content remains extremely strong. Could you tell us a little bit more about the landscape in Indonesia, particularly after Disney's decision to pull their linear channels? What does the landscape look like now? If you could just tell us a little bit more about your sort of macro take on things there.
Yeah, Disney pulling out is something, of course, we know it is a huge news in the market, and of course it will affect the market. But for certain other players, it represents an opportunity, actually. So when Disney decided to pull out, I know my colleagues in the industry from the pay TV operators, they, if you are IPTV, probably you will not worry too much, because right away Disney Hotstar will come and talk to you about the partnership. But if you are a DTH, for example, there is no such option like that. So you will be left with the homework, the huge homework, to find the replacement of the channels. That is as good as Disney, which is, of course, we all know it is not easy to find. But a lot of new channels coming up. But I would say the more dominant one are still the one that is in the market before Disney. The channels like our channel in Indonesia, we are quite dominant. We have two channels, Hore and Hip Hip Hore. Hore is for older kids, Hip Hip Hore is for the preschool, and then channels like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network still there. And I think the diehard, I would say, Disney fans, they would just still look for Disney content. They either subscribe to Disney Hotstar or they go to YouTube, because there are still a lot of Disney content in the YouTube, be it from the Disney Channel or from the pirated content. But I would just wanted to say that the linear channel business at the moment, it is still going surprisingly, I wouldn't say strong, but still surviving. And then I don't see it to be ceasing anytime soon, because in Indonesia, at the moment, the dominant pay TV is actually, when we talk about DTH, there are three players. One is K-Vision, owned by MNC, and then our own Next Parabola, and then Trans Group also own their DTH. And then this combine these three operators, I think we have almost close to 10 million subscribers, and it is not small. And mainly it is catering to the rural area, to middle and low income segment with a very low ARPU. So this segment, they only watch the linear channel. They have no access to the internet, or maybe they cannot afford the price of the internet yet. So at the moment, this is the situation. But in the rural area, in the urban area, yeah, of course, when you subscribe to broadband, you will subscribe to Disney Hotstar or Netflix. There are a lot of kids content there. So I think it divides the market very clearly now between the middle up and then the middle low.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. So from a very general perspective, I'd like to go back to Darren and maybe sort of dig a little bit deeper into just building on your comments about the Asian shows and your relationship with producers in this part of the world. And I was wondering, if we're looking specifically at animation, could you give us some examples of shows from this part of the world that have done particularly well for you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've had a long-standing partnership with One Animation for Oddbods, which is, obviously everyone knows, it's really, really popular. And then in the last few years, we picked up Buck and Buddy, which is a buddy animation about a beetle and a stick insect. And that seems to have really, really resonated with our audience. That's from Little Critters Workshop in Malaysia. And currently I'm in discussions for a number of other animated projects for our channels as well, from Korea, from India, from Malaysia, et cetera. So we are building on a strong stable of content from Asia. I should also add, part of the reason why we've been looking out in Asia, I mentioned about diversity. We do have kids in the UK from all over the world, from lots of different cultures. The UK is a real melting pot. So in terms of us being one of the biggest public service broadcasters, it's within not necessarily our remit, but I think it's the right thing to do to reflect those cultures on screen. and that's what we've been doing. You mentioned about animation. Animation has been probably not it's more out of necessity rather than a strategy, but it's been a bit more accessible to us in terms of picking up content rather than the live action content. I think due to COVID and everything else that's been happening in the last few years, there's been a real lack of live action content available in the market space, we find. So English language produced live action content. So we haven't been able to find that show or the shows that we would be able to acquire and serve our audience. Whereas with animation, we all know production has been booming, it's been continuing. And we lots of producers have come up with lots of fresh new ideas. So we've been able to work with them and engage with them in the last sort of 2 years and to bring a lot of these projects to fruition. So at the moment, the scales are slightly tipped towards animation. But we would definitely not say no to a live action project that we feel hits or is in the right ballpark for our audience. So that's where we are, and we will continue to work with Asian producers to try and find really, really good ideas. So please certainly do come to us and speak to us about it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Darren. And Salmini, I just wanted to pick up on something that you commented on. You were saying that you've been inundated with toddler shows, and just to really be specific for our audience, that you're sourcing programming for your teen audience, and that this is particularly hard. Could you give any more specifics on exactly what you're looking for?
So I think when I look at tween and teens especially, content which has an inspirational aspect to it, or gives them a sense of how can they choose their future path, because that's one space that you see teenagers are completely lost about. So when it came to the kind of content that we created ourselves, we created formats which were biographies. It just kind of inspires you when you see people who have established themselves, where have they come from, what's been their journey. It just makes a teenager or an adolescent feel that, okay, I may be at that point in my life now, but I can become something like that. That's one kind of a topic that we created and we feel is a kind of a reference that we would look at. I think at the end of the day, when you look at even on typical linear medium, you see a lot of these shows, whether it's the Power Rangers or even things like the Hannah Montanas and all. They were very tween and but they were completely just entertainment led. There was some element of education, but not really driven from an education point of view. So I think for us, it is a sense of it needs to have not necessarily like a moral, but it needs to have something that the child is going to be able to take away and be able to imbibe and see for himself. We've even created some videos on financial management for teenagers. How do you manage your own, how do you manage your pocket money, and so some of these kind of DIY kind of videos. So it's I wouldn't really say that we have a very, we're not blinkered to what we are looking at. I think we'd possibly hit the spot once we see it. But definitely, I feel, we want to be able to acquire content beyond the toddler and the preschooler space, because there's a lot of that already.
And just very quickly, Salmini, have you considered other funding models for your programming? Are you open, for example, to brand-funded programming?
Yeah, so one of the things that is part of my marketing strategy is, essentially, I would say there are 3 KPIs to what I want to achieve through my marketing. One is, of course, brand awareness, so that people get to know what the brand is about. The second is, the subscriptions, But of course, that, as we know, is the larger challenge, right, across the globe. The third is, consistent traffic that will help me to build brand solution opportunities. Because at the end of the day, any brand that comes on board, I'm not selling inventory to him. I'm selling the right kind of community and audience, right? And that will only come through a traffic that I can show him, as well as the kind of content that I can bring in. Of course, we marry this with influencer campaigns and stuff like that. So that's the I would say the strategy that we want to approach. The challenge sometimes becomes when brands come in is that, yes, they possibly kind of, they drive the agenda. But I think that balance is always something that you deal with. Like, how do you keep your brand sanctity alive at the same time? It's revenue coming in. You don't want to say no.
Exactly. And Darren, I think in the UK it's very different. Brand funded programming is challenging due to the regulations around sponsorship and advertising. Would you therefore say that the model for you at the moment, preferred model, is very much finished tape acquisitions? And from a practical point of view, what is the best way producers and buyers can reach out to you and in order to justify a meeting or an initial call with you?
Yeah, sure. So to the first part of that question, it definitely has to be sort of finished tape acquisitions. Ofcom, our regulator in the UK, they have quite strict rules around sponsorship, branding, around kids content. Specifically, being a commercial broadcaster, we've seen the rules change quite a lot in the last sort of 20 years, and the impact it's had. So we must. Our preference is definitely for finished tape acquisitions, if it's not a UK produced show. In terms of producers, distributors, contact to me. LinkedIn, email, via email. I'm not sure if my email will be shared.
Yes, we can share. Yeah,
yes.
You're okay with
yeah, I'm more than happy for people to email me directly. We've got quite a big team here at ITV in the kids team, so we will review everything and come back to you. So and also markets, obviously, MIP TV, MIPCom, etc., all the additional markets, we tend to have a presence there. So do email to set up a meeting, and we're more than happy to have a chat.
And with an initial Bible document, for example, and a finished episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. I would say more than just a couple of lines about the idea. I think a pitch Bible is recommended, and some scripts will be great if you have it, but certainly a pitch Bible at the very minimum.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you, Darren. And finally, Hendy, continue with some practical advice for people tuning in. It would be really interesting, given your position, if we could close with some of your thoughts on what works in Indonesia and what doesn't in the kids programming space.
But well, for Indonesia, I think it's very simple. It is a very simple market, not sophisticated. So, for content to be popular here, especially in the kids segment, it just has to be simple. It just has to be fast paced. I think the audience don't like the content that is too deep. The storyline that is too serious, too heavy. So kids just want to have fun. And then let them have fun. And then with the story that is fast paced, and then plenty of songs. The kids love songs.
Music. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this will be some of the keys to success. I can tell you that actually, contrary to what some people believe, the technical aspect of the animation, meaning the graphic and all that, may or may not play an important part in a certain animation being successful or not, because professionals like us, sometimes we are trapped in viewing a content in such a way. Sometimes we don't see it through the kids' eyes. You say that this content is bad because they don't use a good software. Technically it's not very good. But the kids don't look at it that way. Kids just they don't think too much. They just watch, and then if they feel that they enjoy it, then they say it's good.
Yeah, you have the right story and you have the right music.
Correct. The most important part is the storyline. The storytelling will have to be very good. At the end of the day, it's all about the storytelling. All the technical aspect is just a supporting cast.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much to all three of you. Thank you for making the time, and thank you for tuning in to our audience. Do look out for part 2 of this series coming up in June, where ATF will bring you noteworthy speakers in documentary and formats. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.